The courtroom was packed. They didn't have enough room for the defendants on the police docket in the courtroom because there were so many spectators there. People from all over the city-county building that worked there came to see the initial arraignment in the municipal court. And it was just, it wasn't mayhem, it was just crowded. Well, the defendants, Gertrude Baniszewski is the one everybody focuses on. She was haggard. You could see that she had once maybe been a pretty woman, but she wasn't by then. And she just looked exhausted. And of course her defense was that she was exhausted while all this was happening and she couldn't have supervised it. Her daughter Paula was just sort of a slob and just sat there, and we never heard much from her. She didn't testify. Johnny Baniszewski, he was sort of cute, a little pudgy, 12-year-old kid charged with murder. The others charged were Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard. Now Ricky Hobbs, he's 15 at the time of the trial, 14 at the time of the murder. He looked like an ordinary teenage kid, and in most ways seemed to be. The fact was, he carved a tattoo on this teenage girl's belly in the process of her death. The other defendant was Coy Hubbard. He was taller and bigger and looked mean. And he was later convicted of armed robbery after he served his sentence for manslaughter in the case of Sylvia Likens. Who were the monsters in this case? Well, obviously, the jury didn't miss with Gertrude Baniszewski. And I think they didn't miss with Paula Baniszewski. She was mean as a snake. She had no sympathy for anyone. Now, there was an incident where Paula took Sylvia to the door and advised her to get the hell out, because if she didn't, she was in bigger trouble than she already was. But that was one glimmer of sympathy from Paula. She didn't try to help Sylvia escape. She didn't find her a place to go. And she broke her arm, slugging Sylvia in the jaw, and went to church and bragged about it.
Radio Indiana, WIBC, Indianapolis.
Parole in a 20-year-old murder case, and this is WIBC News. May 1965, when 16-year-old Sylvia Likens was tortured to death by members of the Baniszewski family, with whom the child was staying while her parents worked with a traveling carnival. When the case broke, Paul Page was our anchorman, and the late Bob Hoover, our street reporter. The following is an excerpt from a 1965 newscast in which Bob Hoover spoke with Richard Hobb, who explained what he did to the girl.
All I did was write out that thing on her stomach, and then I hit her about 10 or 15 times.
But how come?
Well, mostly because Gertie told me to.
Hoover then spoke to one of the Baniszewski children, who told him how the victim was treated.
She refused food. We tried to get her soup every once in a while and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take it.
Well, how about these scratch marks on her stomach? Who put them on her?
I did.
Why?
Well, Gertie just thought of it. She said, since you branded us, we're going to brand you. So she etched in with a pen, and I went over it. She showed me how to do it, and I went over it. I did it.
Did you ever use any hot irons on her?
No. Yeah, that 3 on her stomach, I did half of that. And Shirley Ann did the other half.
Where'd the S come from?
What do you mean?
There's a big S branded on her stomach, right below one of her breasts.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what you're talking about. Now, how about the inscription on there, I'm a prostitute and proud of it? Who put that on?
I did.
Did you scratch it on there, paint it on there? How'd you do it?
Well, like I said before, Gertie wrote it down there with a pen, and I did the rest. She showed me how to do it, and then...
Had Gertie abused this girl?
Yeah.
Gertrude Baniszewski, however, had a different story.
I did never beat that girl. Never. She was beat up on by other girls. In fact, my own daughter stopped her in the jaw and broke her wrist. And so, I mean, there you go. And girls around the neighborhood beat her up, bloodied her nose. One girl broke her nose, in fact, I think.
Were you ever in contact with the police on any of these occasions?
Well, in the last few weeks, in fact, I think if you'd talk to my daughters, I'd ask them that the children's father and I are divorced. And he's a policeman in Leech Grove, or was. And I've asked the girls repeatedly to call their dad and ask them what to do. And in fact, I asked Jenny, I said, Jenny, and I told Sylvia, I said, Sylvia, I'm going to have to call the police or somebody because I can't have any responsibility.
But the police were called only one time. And according to Hobb...
Well, I'll come in about, she come up from the basement, And we noticed she was cold and everything, so we carried her upstairs, give her a warm bath and artificial respiration. When she stopped breathing, see, we gave her a warm bath, and then she stopped breathing. And so I gave her artificial respiration for about 10 minutes. And then I went and called the police.
By the time police found the girl, she had been dead some 8 to 12 hours.
We have another story of crime and punishment tonight from Indiana. This time the criminal is getting out of jail, but as Edie Magnus reports, not without a great deal of controversy.
Under heavy security, convicted murderess Gertrude Baniszewski appeared before the Indiana Parole Board and asked to be released from prison after 20 years behind bars.
I'm just asking for mercy, nothing else.
Baniszewski was convicted of the 1965 brutal torture and slaying of a neighbor's child, 16-year-old Sylvia Likens. The girl was bludgeoned, scalded, tattooed, and starved by Baniszewski and her children while she lived in their home. Baniszewski was sent to prison for life. Baniszewski's request for an early parole from prison outraged victims' rights groups throughout the community, who said she should never have a second chance. But in September, the parole board voted to give her that chance. Then protesters collected 40,000 signatures objecting to her release and staged a memorial funeral procession to Sylvia Likens' grave. The wave of protest persuaded a judge to vacate the earlier parole decision and order today's extraordinary hearing before the public.
If you turn Gertrude Baniszewski loose, you might as well put me in prison, because I would be in prison in my own home, afraid to go anywhere by myself again.
Baniszewski told the parole board she's a born-again Christian. She burst into tears when asked to talk about her crime.
I can't do it, and I'm sorry. That's all I can say. And I ask him to forgive me. That's all I can tell you.
Once again, the board voted 3-2 to let Baniszewski go.
The bottom line, you cannot bring someone who is dead and gone back to life. And I wouldn't be a member of this board if I didn't believe people could change.
Baniszewski will be released soon, as she already has a place to stay, a new job, and a new identity, so she can try to lead a normal life. Edie Magnus, ABC News, Indianapolis.